Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Okay, folks, we're ready to roll. Thank you all for coming. Tremendous to see so many of you here. So, welcome to Through a Scottish Prism, our live audience. Now, I've got some questions here, and we'll take more questions, as many as you've got, and we'll start with these. And if there's any supplementary questions that come from these, we'll pass the mic out among you and you can ask them, but could you please keep these questions small, not make it a long 20-minute winded wee chat. So you do that. You'll also notice we've got some nice prism stuff here, which you can gladly buy. We're doing them at special prices. A lovely prism pen for £1, a mug for £5, a t-shirt for £10, and a polo shirt for 15 quid. Can't be, never to be repeated prices. And they all help.
How much are the termites?
How much are the what?
Termites.
I'll tell you later. Right, anyway, so I'm going to start with the first question. But before I do that, let me introduce our panel today. Of course, on my right here, I have Eva Cromley here, who's now not in Clackmannanshire, but she's up here in Inverness for the rest of us. Eva Cromley. And up from the borders, our Yvonne Ridley. And flown in at great expense from Finland, Scotland's highest ever diplomat at the UN. And also, I'm in a bit of a brown nose because he's actually the convener of the International LACU, so I'm doing a bit of brown nosing here. Daniel Jack. We do have Mr. Murray, but you'll see he's at the bar, and that tells you all you need to know. He'll fit right into the prism crowd. Exactly, I bet we like it. It's a Lagavulin for Mr. Murray. And when you're ready, Mr. Murray, we don't want to start without you. Anyway, I've got... Oh, very good, very good. We've got a fantastic first question. Unusually, as you know, we usually have the topics and we're ready to talk, but this is your event, so it's your questions. And a cracking question here to start with, from David Greenless of Perth and Kinross, LACU. And it's, how can we stop divisions and infighting within the independence movement?
Hello, we don't have any of our team here.
Would you go first? Eva, would you care to start?
There's a very easy way to stop division within the Scottish independence movement. All it requires...
Press the button. Press the button while you're speaking. Speak.
All it needs... All it needs is Hamza Yusuf to pick up the phone and phone Alex Salmond. That's all it needs. One wee telephone call. Nothing more, nothing less. It would be the easiest, cleanest, quickest way to heal the unnecessary divisions that our movement has seen in the last few years. If the supplementary question is, do we think it will happen? That depends very much on people on the streets and people taking action themselves by attending marches and rallies, by writing to their MPs and MSPs, by going to surgeries and telling the people that we elected to deliver our independence that they better get the finger out and get the job done.
Hello? Yes. Just following on from what Eva said, you know, we're all on a journey, and we're all heading in the same direction, and we're all going to the same destination. And the stragglers, the SNP that have been left behind, you know, we've all been there, and or the majority of us who were in Alipur were once part of the SNP. We have to focus on what unites us, not what divides us, and we've just got to bite our tongue, which is easier said than done. I'm one of the greatest culprits, I think, of that. But yeah, we've all been there, and it just takes some people longer than others for the penny to drop. It would be great if the SNP membership actually rose up and brought their politicians to account and held them to account. But I don't think that that's going to happen, because the party is being configured in such a way that the membership doesn't have a voice. And so I think we need to be a little bit more understanding and, as I say, bite our tongue, and especially when we go on the social networks. And, you know, we just resolve to make a friend on Twitter with somebody, you know, it will go a long way, because we are heading in the same direction. And as I say, some of us are getting there quicker than others, and we should help the stragglers who are being left behind. And when they wake up out of this malaise, they're going to be so angry. But they've got to go through that stage yet.
Thank you. Daniel.
Thank you. I think it's easy for us in Alba Party because we are of one mind, or we are of one focus, which is sorry. I think it's easy for us in the Alba Party because we are of one mind. Right. Can you hear me now? No. Hello, can you hear me now? Yeah. I think it's easy for us in the Alba Party because if you think of what Tasmina said at the end of conference about the family atmosphere and the friendly atmosphere that we have, and the common agenda, which is the delivery of independence, that makes things easier for us. For those in the SNP and elsewhere who have seen their hopes dashed time and time again, they're in a very difficult place. And I think it would be quite understandable for them to look at our success and feel resentful of that. And equally, it would be easy for us to gloat at what we have achieved in 2 years and what has happened to them. But that's not the way to go ahead, I don't think. There needs to be empathy, there needs to be an understanding, and we need to be absolutely clear that the agenda is not about dissing other people, it is about delivering independence for Scotland. That is our primary aim. And members of the SNP, whoever they are, share that. They may not act as if they believe in that, but deep down they do, I think. The ordinary members of the SNP do absolutely believe that. And it's about engaging with them and encouraging them and communicating with them in a positive way, I think. And on social media, it's very easy to be dismissive and to be negative. But we have the upper hand here, folks. And I think we need to demonstrate that magnanimity with them. And be patient, because as Yvonne said, they're going through a process. We need to be patient with them, and we will get there.
Is that working? Yep. I'll start by saying I'm going to try to answer this question despite the handicap that I do not have a malt whiskey in front of me. I was called back from a bar to take part in the panel, which was a breach of my human rights. If anyone wants to rectify that as we go on, I'd be extremely grateful, and will reciprocate later.
Could someone please get my leg of rolling? I'll never hear the end of it.
I think what will unite the independence movement is campaigning for independence. And we need a campaign for independence. We need an end goal. We need a declaration. We need a declaration as to when independence is going to happen. That might be, okay, a majority of votes for independence parties at the next general election will bring a declaration of independence, and that's fine, that's good, we can unite around that. But we need a campaign with a date and a goal and an understanding of what brings independence. Without that, without something to actually aim for, an end point that actually is independence, we're not going to unite the movement. And I think we can't shy away from the fact that the SNP hopelessly lost the plot. Why are we looking at stupid ideas like trials without juries, which is extremely divisive, instead of going for independence? Why are we tackling something as divisive as gender reform without going for independence? And I would say, I don't entirely agree, but we all agree that we're all on the same page and trying to go the same way. I think an awful lot of people, I think the people who left the SNP, and my guess is the large majority of people here left the SNP, are all people who were in the SNP because they supported independence. But a lot of the SNP's new members have joined in order to fulfill projects of social engineering, or because they see it as a good career. Now the SNP became the party of government. There are a lot of the new membership of the SNP who aren't actually particularly interested in independence at all, and I think we have to face that fact. The SNP is not the same thing the SNP was 5 years ago. It's a very, very different animal now. So what it needs is a concentration and commitment to independence. We need to end the devolution trap of putting stupid and socially divisive policies through the Scottish Parliament instead of practicing independence first. And we can sort out those things after. We're all entitled to our different views on those controversial policies. Why do we have to tackle them now? Let's get independence. After independence, like any normal country, we can have our disagreements about particular policies. But the only way to unite the independence movement is a commitment by all parties to campaign for nothing but independence now.
Excellent question. Another fantastic question here from Leanne Tervitt in Fife-Lacker. And it's this: voter ID unfairly discriminates against those in deprived areas. How do we overcome this, given that the independence support is high in our council schemes?
There is a process online whereby you can apply for ID and you don't have to pay for it. But I'm one of those people who thinks that you shouldn't need photo ID to vote. My view is that you turn up and you vote, and that this entire process is done deliberately to put people off voting, because if everybody was motivated to vote, then we wouldn't have either the government in Westminster that we've got or the one that we've got in Holyrood either. So what we actually have to do as a movement is to give people something worth voting for, with or without photo ID. We have to maintain that dream and have queues of people right round the whole country registering to vote, and then going out on referendum day or general election day or whenever the hell it is, and actually exercising their franchise. And then we won't have to worry anymore about people that are too poor to afford photo ID, because Scotland won't have poverty anymore.
as usual, I'm in lockstep with Eva on this, but I would also go one step further, which went down like a lead balloon at the last conference, and that is I would make voting compulsory. It's being carried out in about 20, 30 different countries at the moment, including Australia. It works very well. Women have paid the blood price so that we could vote. And, you know, our vote is precious. It's election day is the one day in the entire calendar where we are all equal, where one vote counts exactly the same as somebody else's vote. Doesn't matter whether you're rich, poor, working class, upper class, middle class, whatever. That one day is so important, and that's why I really believe that it should be compulsory. And if voting was made compulsory, I think we would see quite a different political landscape to what we've got at the moment.
How would you deal, Yvonne, with those who dissented from that compulsory voting? How would you deal with those?
Well, you know, most people are law-abiding. You know, for those of us who drive, now and again we'll go a little bit over the limit, but we know what the limits are, and we, you know, as I say, most people are law-abiding. They might begrudge it.
The census was compulsory, and the response to that was a kind of reaction, it was a kind of kickback from that. You know, I just want you to reflect on that.
I just think that our democracy is so precious, and it goes back to education. You know, schools in Britain don't really touch upon the importance of democracy, and when kids are leaving school, the importance of voting should be placed upon them. And as I say, nobody likes being told what to do.
Certainly don't, not in Scotland.
But look at, well, yeah, but look at the governments that we've got. You know, they say that we get the governments that we deserve. My God, I don't know what we've done to deserve 30 years of bloody Tories. But we, you know, anything that can change the political landscape, you know, I think we should give it a go. And if we're prepared, and I've heard a lot of people in this room say what they're prepared to do for independence, and there are people in this room who will dig up their claymore and fight for independence if they have to. You know, that's how precious independence is. So why shouldn't we build in that voting is compulsory? If voting had been, because if voting had been compulsory during the referendum, I think we would have got it.
No doubt, but it's totalitarian. No doubt that was the case.
I'll get the mic to you in a second, and you can make your point, but I just say that one of the things about PRISM, the great thing is that unlike political parties or certain social engineering that's been going through Scotland, in here you can disagree, and I have to say I disagree, because we have a democratic right to vote, and we have a democratic right to abstain, and I think people should be allowed that democratic right to abstain if they so choose. I don't think forcing someone to vote is the correct thing.
Hazel, can you take the mic to the grey button? He's got a point to make. Gentleman here. No, here, over here. This gentleman
No,
here.
that's okay. I'm very sorry. I can understand Yvonne's imperative. You know, certainly can understand it. But you know, I just know myself. Okay, perhaps I'm taking myself as a reference case, but I know other people, and they'd say, forget it. If you tell me to vote, I'm not voting. Sorry, Yvonne, that's human nature. But I agree with you. It'd be good if you could help people in and say, get a bloody thing signed. I understand that, but I don't think it would work. And nor should it work. That's, you know, next step, compulsory, I don't know what else. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Carol.
Yeah, I just think enforcement is the antithesis of democracy. Incompatible.
so that's not there. Pressing the button.
I agree with that up to a point, but you know, when I was campaigning in 2014, I spoke to lots of people who said, "Oh, we'd love to vote yes, but we're not on the register and everything," and they get in a lot of trouble. They get fined. They're in poor conditions. If it was compulsory to vote, these people would get a vote, and I think that's an important thing. I know in Australia, a lot of the people there are some of the younger people don't like the fact that they're made to vote, and they get fined. But like you say, with driving license, with every other thing, people have to do it, and the right to abstain is good, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. I think it should be compulsory. I would be for that, definitely.
Well, this is good. We're getting a bit of action there. All the hands are going up. We can get things going. I would just say on your point there about the compulsory again, is that if you remember to 2014, a lot of us were out knocking on the doors then in the schemes, and we were signing up people. One of I think the big problems were we told those people, I mean, they were the people who would have benefited most probably from independence, and they were let down again because we didn't actually get it over the line. And we have to go back out, I believe, go back out into those areas and convince them once more that they have to get back out there and vote.
For various reasons, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't go on the register.
Well, I'll let Daniel answer next. I personally think that forcing people to vote is undemocratic. That's just my opinion.
You can
Daniel,
launch people with emotional blackmail.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I think it's working now. I think that, well, I live in a country where you can't do anything without your ID card, and people accept it. So you turn up to vote and you hand over your ID card and you're allowed to vote. I understand, of course, that that's unacceptable to lots of people, probably in this room and in the country, but it works. But going back to the question, I think it's really a really important question, because as Roddy has said, the people living in those areas of deprivation in particular had the most to gain from independence. And as Eva has said, we need the right policies, we need the right convincing arguments, but equally we need the right mechanisms and support structures in place to make sure that they don't fall down at the hurdle of ID when it comes to voting. So we need to have those support systems in place to ensure that those people who would benefit most from independence don't fall at the final hurdle when it actually comes to vote. And I think we as a party need to think how we do that.
Leanne, who asked the questions now.
Yeah, I asked the question. See, I would go from a slightly different approach. When I was campaigning, I was sitting in houses that was chaotic houses. It was alcoholics, it was drug abusers, it was single parents, it was single men on their own on benefits. That I went into all the welfare areas, and I think personally that getting these people signed up for postal voting would be absolutely great. Expecting these people to drive a mile to jump on 2 buses with 3 kids in tow, or have a drink in them, people with problems and people with chaotic homes, expecting them to go out and vote on one specific day is hard. It's really, really hard. They've not got easy lifestyles. They can't jump in their car like we can and nip down to the polling station and back in the house in 5 minutes. It doesn't work like that. So I think we need to get out and get folk registered, and I know I batter on about this all the time, and get them signed up for postal voting. Postal votes, they can sit there for a couple of weeks, they can nip up to the shop, they can nip to drop their bairns off at school, they can say, all right, I'll just sign this, I'll just tick my box and take it up there. That's my idea anyway.
Aye. I don't support compulsory voting because people are using their democratic right not to vote. What I do think should be changed, though, is how the electoral register is used. Because a lot of people are disenfranchised because they will not go in electoral register because of the poll, well, it used to be the poll tax, now it's a council tax.
there's too many people who have access to that electoral register for other purposes. So there should be a safeguard that when you're on that electoral register, it can be used for no other purpose.
To go back to the original question, on voter ID, it's trying to solve a problem that didn't exist. You know, the personation is almost non-existent. The number of cases of personation in Scotland in the last 100 years is about 6 in the last 100 years. You know, people do not turn up pretending to be other people and voting. It just almost never happens. There is no need for voter ID, and it's purely a voter suppression mechanism by the Tories to try and make it harder for poorer people to vote. I actually think there is a problem with postal voting. I was very suspicious about some of the postal voting patterns in the 2014 referendum. That postal voting really is a problem. The verification for postal voting is just a signature check. An awful lot of the postal voters are people who don't live in Scotland anyway, but are postal voting from at their second home address from England. Or in 2014, there were people who've never been in Scotland who were registered by local unionists to vote at an address in Scotland where people claimed they had unionists living with them who are actually down in London or whatever. You know, postal voting is not properly verified at all, and is a much, much bigger problem. And it's really interesting that the Tories are bringing in something about one problem that doesn't exist and doing nothing whatsoever about a much bigger problem that does. As regards getting, I should say, if voting became compulsory, I wouldn't do it on principle. I'm against compulsion by the state in general, and I think introducing more compulsion by the state is very seldom the answer. Williams Brothers Brewery in Glasgow, during the 2014 referendum campaign, in all of their Tide pubs and pubs they own, they had a big drive to get all the local drinkers signed up. And they signed up about 6,000 people to the electoral registers in Glasgow through the pubs. And I'm not saying that they did that in any way to influence the way people voted, but I will say that the owner, Bruce Williams, told me about this on an AUOB march. There are innovative ways. That's an innovative way you don't think of. You know, how do you get at the people who live in schemes? Well, try their local pub. Try local community hubs and different ways of looking at things that aren't necessarily the normal way we do politics. But there's no doubt at all, we do have a problem in that our greatest support comes from the schemes. And that's also where the lowest voter registration is. And you're absolutely right, that a lot of that is people not wanting to be on the register because they have various reasons they're not that keen on the authorities keeping track on them. And that's something we have to work to get around. There's supposed to be a Chinese wall in the council between council tax and electoral registration. They're already not supposed to use it for that purpose, but they do. And enforcement of that is important. But no, I think showing ID as you vote is totally unnecessary. It's showing a problem, it's solving a problem that doesn't exist. I think tightening up the postal vote and making sure that the people on the electoral register getting postal votes really are people who actually live in Scotland and actually exist is an extremely important thing as we move forward.
Daniel, you want to take on
Yes, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things that Leanne said and Craig, and that's about looking at innovative ways of encouraging people to vote which fits in with their lifestyle. And Finland is not utopia, but it has got some really innovative approaches to engaging people with the public, with the government. And elections is one of those. So we've just had a general election in Finland. And 2 weeks before, 2 weeks before the election takes place, you will find pop-up shops in supermarkets and local city centres all over the place. And these are staffed by council employees, and people can pop in and vote whilst doing the shopping. And the example from this recent election was the president was going on a state visit to South Africa or somewhere, and he knew that he wouldn't be able to vote when he was out the country, so he popped into his local library and voted. I mean, it's things like that. We need to be more innovative.
Good idea.
And that's the sort of thing I'd like to see in an independent Scotland.
Good idea.
Expecting voters to turn up on one day to vote when you're in that kind of lifestyle is just ridiculous.
I'll just come to the second, Andy. I would say, as probably most of you know, I come from, I live now in Catalonia most of the year. I've been there now for 6 years. I cannot vote. I want to broaden this out a wee bit. I cannot vote in anything but local elections. I can't vote in a general election. When the next time the Catalans have a referendum on independence, I cannot vote in that. And I think that's right. I chose to go there and live. What right do I have to tell them their form of government? I chose to go there. So I think I definitely think it's a debate we have to have. I've taken a bit of flack for it, but I think it's the right thing.
So, like Roddy, I live abroad, I live in France now, and the way it works there is every kid in their citizenship classes in school learns that voting is not only a right, but a responsibility. So they're encouraged very strongly to vote, but it's not obligatory. But what the French will do, because they get 80% turnouts in everything, is they have the possibility to vote blank, they call it, vote white, which is abstention. So voting white is counted, and people in the bar will say, "Oh, I'm voting white next week." That kind of, it's a legitimate way of voicing your displeasure with all of the above. So that is one option. That's one way. That's one way we can get around what Roddy's talking about people being forced to vote. You can be and Craig, you can be forced to vote. None of, well, not forced, but you're encouraged to vote. None of the above. But I wanted to ask Yvonne, because she's a journalist, she might have looked into this. I've not. I'm aware that Australia is compulsory to vote. Is there any research that shows what colour the voting changes when you make it compulsory? Does it go more left? Does it go more right? Is there any evidence?
It's something that do I need a mic? It's something that needs to be looked into in greater detail. And one of the things after my motion was kicked out at the last conference, one of the things that we decided to look at was exactly that. Let's see how it works in other countries. And but I agree with you on the right to be able to not vote, but have on the ballot paper none of the above.
There was a question that's dear to my heart. For those who were at the conference last year, I was the losing side in this one. But Matthew Love from South Lanarkshire, Lacu, has asked, should the Scottish Government the Scottish governments act like the Sinn Féin and not send MPs to Westminster? Instead use them to run an indie campaign. So basically, should there be abstentionism?
I was in two minds about this because I really enjoyed the day that Kenny and Neil were thrown out the House of Commons. So I'd quite like us to be there to get thrown out. You can see that that particular occasion hit the headlines literally worldwide. It had an enormous impact. That kind of behaviour is what we should be seeing from the SNP MPs every single week. They could all take turns. There are so many of them, they could have a week about and cover the whole year. Let's not worry about why they don't do that, because we know damn fine why they don't do that. So I think I tend to the view that while we're there, we should make the most of it, because there have been various debates that Neil and Kenny have led on or contributed to that have been really important, whether that's been Neil's bill in relation to self-determination, and that bill seeks to bring back to Scotland the right to hold a legal referendum on independence. That bill is supported by a handful of SNP MPs, and since Neil first introduced it to the House of Commons, no other SNP MP has come forward to support it, and that is a disgrace. So we can talk until the cows come home about should we be like Sinn Féin. In the real world, if we want Scottish independence, we can only get that if we elect people who have the guts, the courage, the determination, the virtue and the integrity to do what it says on the tin. So it doesn't really matter whether we're going down the abstentionist route or otherwise. If we don't elect people who will deliver what they promised, then we're stuffed before we've even started.
I think we should adopt the French model, because we're not going to get independence through politics. We're going to get it by taking to the streets. And I mean, I live down on the borders. We need to bring the country to a halt, using our friends in the trade unions, blocking the roads, stopping trade, having a general strike, and stopping all the power, our energy, our power going south of the border, and really make Westminster feel the pain of what happens if we, the people, decide just to say, no, enough is enough, and cut them off. And then suddenly they'll start to realise that the power and how much they rely on Scotland, because people in England think that we're just a bunch of whinging Scots. Chancers. They laugh at us. They're taking our energy. They're enjoying all the energy that Kenny McCaskill was talking about. They don't realise how grateful that they should be to Scotland, and how we would make great neighbours. You know, even in independence, it doesn't mean to say we'd rebuild a wall and say, you know, two fingers and off you go. We would make great neighbours, and I think that those in the north of England that have suffered nearly as much as the Scots would also enjoy the proximity of being near to Scotland and independent Scotland, because they would benefit as well. And I just think that we're not angry enough yet. We're too comfortable. So yeah, I mean, we've seen what Sinn Féin have gone through, but we, as Eva said, we've got two excellent MPs who punch well above their weight, who are making their presence felt in Westminster, and you know, that they are doing us proud. And so at the last conference, when I said we should go for abstentionism, I was conflicted, because, you know, Neil and Kenny, as I say, are punching well above their weight. But it's down to us. We need to get angry, and then we need to get active. And, you know, the people, when the people start to move, great things can happen, and we're just not angry enough yet. We're too comfortable.
Can I just say, if we weren't on the list of GHCQ, we are now.
Daniel.
Yes, well, I'm not in favour of abstentionism. And the main reason being, as has been said, Kenny and Neil have done amazing things. Two men who joined the party in the face of really bitter hostility from their former colleagues who were ostracised. You look at their track record of what they have achieved in Parliament and nationally, it is an amazing track record. Absolutely amazing. They have done sterling work. And they are an asset, not just to the party, but they're an asset to Scotland. And I think if it were to be removed from that, from Parliament, we would lose that. One of the key things in the independence strategy, which I hold very dear to my heart, is garnering support internationally. If you have two MPs in the House of Parliament reaching out to the diplomatic community, to international organisations, all of whom are based in London, that is a tremendous asset. It has tremendous potential to help fulfil that part of the independence strategy. So my view is abstentionism, I understand it, but I think where we are on our journey, we can't afford to have it. We should maximise the assets we have.
Okay. I think at the last conference, I think at the last conference, the only three people who spoke in favour of abstentionism are sitting at this table, and I was one of them. I think I favour abstentionism. It worked for Sinn Féin. It didn't have the effects of isolating them politically or internationally, but people say it will. It worked for them very well, and I think the dangers of the Westminster charade are well illustrated. And I think that goes wider. You know, I really think devolution has had its time. I don't think the Scottish government's doing any good at all in running a farce at Hollywood. I'd argue that the current Scottish government's doing more harm than good. I'm now going to do what I like to do, which is to take the question to talk about something I wanted to talk about anyway, which is to say that in considering our MPs and whether they should go to Westminster or whether they should abstain, we should also consider how many MPs we should have. And I think this is a conversation we've really got to have. I think, as a party, we have a moral duty to oppose people like Alan Smith and Kirsty Blackburn and Kirsten Oswald. And to give independent supporters in those constituencies a chance to vote for a decent human being instead. I think that's got to be done. I didn't join ALBA to join a list-only party, and I don't want us to be a list-only party. I want us to be fighting in first-past-the-post seats. And of course I don't want to stand against Joanna Cherry or Doug Chapman or many of the very, very decent people who remain in the SNP. But there are some people in the SNP who are a positive detriment and danger to Scotland, and they should be opposed.
I would also say that the way that Kenny and Neil punch above the weight, great guys, but not everyone is like Kenny and Neil. That's the problem, in my opinion.
I was first, Roddy.
I didn't see that, I'm sorry.
Apologies, it was my question. I was at the bar though. Some things have to take priority. Part of my question and what I kind of meant with that was we could have abstentionism, however, send a couple of our best firebrands down there, like Kenny, etc. Right? You don't need to abstain everyone. However, I like the concept that they go and all pledge allegiance to the Scottish people as opposed to the king, right? They get funding from Westminster that's rightly Scotland's anyway, and you use all the Scottish MPs to work in independence at home, and you just send your firebrands down to get it up them.
Mine's is to add on from what Craig said. I don't think we should just be inviting ex-SNP, MPs, MSP to join ALBA when they fall out with SNP or they don't get elected. I think we have to be very, very careful not to end up with the rot that we've got in SNP and ALBA.
You've led me on to a rather good question, your comment about the King. And this one's from Connie Davison in Perth and Kinross. I want to tell Perth and Kinross, if you see my wee pal Pete, tell him I was asking for him. And the question is the current incumbent on the throne of England a fit person to wear the Scottish crown? The culture is what leads to politics. We Scots have been bombarded with foreign culture through the foreign media, and how do we support our national culture while supporting an English king?
I've got a client who lives with our partner, and they're both unfortunately unemployed, and their income in a month is universal credit of £780 for a couple for a month, maybe 4 weeks. £266 of that goes to the rent, but doesn't cover the full rent because the rent is higher than the council think it should be, so they have to make up the extra. So if you work it out, they've got about £100 a week to live on. 2 adults in their early 40s in Scotland in 2023. So you can take your crown and your gold carriages and your diamonds and your ornaments, and you can ram it where the sun doesn't shine, because there are no circumstances within which Scotland should have a monarch. It is outdated, it is wrong, it is hugely, as we know, elitist, and every penny that was spent on the abomination of that coronation is a penny that was not spent educating or treating or looking after or feeding or heating any of the people in the UK who richly deserve that service and that attention far more than a man who is there by dint of birth.
I just don't see the point of having these self-entitled, privileged wretches governing and leading this life. I don't know about you, but I felt as though I was watching Sky News, I felt as though I was being groomed to accept these privileged individuals and their children and the whole dynasty of Windsors and the legacy. And I went to visit my mother who lives in England, and my God, you couldn't move for the butcher's apron, the Union Jack. Everywhere there was just loads of this bunting, and people were being conditioned. I went to London, and the whole of Oxford Street was just masses upon masses of the Union flag, and you just realise that the vast sums of money that was spent on this coronation, a lot of it was to condition and groom people into believing that this was the order of things. So, yeah, they can shove the crown, and which is full of stolen jewels. Everything in that ceremony was stolen, and our beloved stone stolen with the complicity of the First Minister. It was disgraceful. If there'd been an appeal on television from Humza saying, "Come to the castle and help me stop the stone from going," I would have jumped on a bus or a train to go to stop it from happening. It was awful just watching him give away. Yeah, it was humiliating, really humiliating.
I think the wording of the question was, is he a proper person to sit on the throne of Scotland or something like that? The answer is no, because no one should be sitting on the throne of Scotland. The whole concept of a throne is an outdated entity, and you just need to look at the ceremony to think, well, it was part pantomime, but it was also incredibly offensive. I mean, I'm in a minority. I'm a member of the Scottish Episcopal Church. There's only about 60,000 of us in the whole country. But, you know, for me, him having to say that Protestantism was the only true religion and all that mumbo-jumbo, I thought, this is grossly offensive to the vast majority of the people of this country. It was obscene. And then when we went to see the photos with all the robes and all the rest of it, it was pure pantomime. You know, it was completely divorced from reality. So no, I don't think he should be sitting on the throne. I don't think anyone should be sitting on the throne. I think we are looking to establish a modern, independent, Western European country, and that has a republican model. But as a sort of side note, you won't believe this, but the whole thing was broadcast live on Yle, which is the equivalent, Finnish equivalent of BBC One, with instant translation and subtitles going through the whole thing for hours and hours, and you thought, this is madness. You know, Finns have, well, they were part of the Russian Empire, but you know, this has got no relation to Finns at all, and yet they were obsessed by it, and also just thinking, what the hell is going on here? You know, is this really the UK at modern times?
Great. Well, 40% of the panel are members of the Scottish Episcopalian Church. There's an unexpected event. And as were a plurality of the Scots who died at Culloden, which is something which is now forgotten. And it's one of the lies we learn in history, which is it was a Catholic uprising. But the largest single denomination in the Jacobite army were Episcopalians, actually Protestant, including Jacobite commander Lord George Murray, who was an Episcopalian. And actually the Episcopalian churches were all destroyed after or large majority of them were destroyed after the rebellion. Just an interesting facet of history, which is relevant here, of course, because after Queen Anne Stuart of the United Kingdom died, George I was 68th in line to the throne. But the first non-Catholic. So there's no, we shouldn't, of course we shouldn't have a king at all. But if we did have a king, of course it wouldn't be this bloody idiot. If you're a monarchist, even in your own terms, this isn't actually the royal family of Scotland. Strangely enough, in the year 2000, I organised the Queen's state visit to Ghana, which was a huge amount of work. And I was offered the medal of Commander of the Royal Victorian Order, CVO, as a result of my efforts. Of course, I refused it. And previously, I'd turned down 2 other medals in the course of my diplomatic career. And on this occasion, I had a one-on-one audience with the Queen and Prince Philip in Ghana as she left, where she thanked me for organising a visit. And she said, "Mr. Murray," she said, "you've, I see you keep refusing medals." She said, "Would you mind if I asked why?" And I said, "No, madam," I said, "I'm a Scottish nationalist and a Republican." And I cannot describe the look on her face. It was plainly, in her fairly long life already by then, nobody had ever said anything like that to her before. She was absolutely, I'm sure she realised such people existed, but she'd never actually met one. And
Did I wait when I get my claymore?
She was perfectly friendly, she was very nice about it, and in fact she gave me a letter jack as an alternative to the medal, made by her cousin Viscount Linley in his carpentry workshop, which I subsequently auctioned for the defence fund of Julian Assange. So, but it's not only the monarchy. The biggest landowner in Scotland is the Duke of Buccleuch, and that's part of the same bloody system. I came up on the train from Edinburgh today for 30 miles. I was driving, I was on the train going to land owned by the Duke of Atholl, who's never been to Scotland and lives in Australia. We still have, the monarchy is the top of a corrupt system, and in Scotland we are the worst sufferers from it, because the system of land has led to the despoilation of the Highlands to land which is perfectly agricultural viable and used to support large communities. If you walk through the Highlands, the number of distressed and broken down foundations of old crofts you walk past on land which they claim now can't support anything more than grouse. It's an absolute disgrace. So it's not just the monarchy, it's the whole damn system we're fighting.
We're going to have to wrap this up very soon, because if anything else, we're guests here and the Hoolie is being held back by us sitting here, so we have to let the Hoolie get on. But I want to finish up with one last question. I can't get through all of them, and there's one of them I definitely can't ask. I did that for a while. But I just would like to ask the panellists, in the last week with the 20,000 people or whatever marching through Glasgow, with what's been happening with the stone and the rebellion and the coronation and everyone not being happy, do we feel that there's a change in the air?
Yes. The coroners come down out of the thatch, haven't they? There is a change, there is a move. There's a whiskey, thank you. And there is a growing momentum that we've got to keep up. Because it's easy to look backwards and say, prosperity to Scotland and no union. But that was hundreds of years ago. We want to be able to stand in the here and now and talk about what a great country we live in. And we want to think about tomorrow and all the other tomorrows that have still to come, and to say that we will feed our people. People will have jobs, our children will be educated, our pensioners will not have to choose between heating and eating. The money that's made from our oil and our gas and our wind and our fisheries will be our money, and we will spend it looking after the people of this country and making it the country that we know Scotland should be. So, with that in mind, Scotland United, one candidate in every constituency, country before party, and any politician who pretends otherwise is motivated by self and not by loyalty to the people who put him or her where they are today. So with every sinew of your being, please ram it home to every politician, Alan Smith particularly, Angus Robertson, Hamza Youssef, my friend Pete. This has to be, the next general election has got to be Scotland's date with destiny, because our country and our people deserve nothing less.
Yeah, again, totally agree with what Eva has said. I do think that the All Under One Banner March was a turning point. And as odd as this may seem, the SNP might actually have done us a big favour. Because what has happened in recent months, it's been off the scale, the speed of the downfall of the SNP. And people who thought that the independence movement was the SNP will have got a big lesson from the All Under One Banner March, because we proved that the movement doesn't belong to a political party, it belongs to us, the people. And I genuinely think that the turnout in the driving rain as well was a turning point. This conference that we've had, I think, was a turning point as well. And the speech that Alex made it perfectly clear to all of us that it's country first, Scotland united, and you know, we're on the way. We've made a great recovery, and we have shown the SNP to be irrelevant. Now they either follow us or they get left behind. The choice is theirs.
I'm a sort of semi-detached observer, since I'm thousands of miles away in Finland, but even I can sense that there is something afoot. And I think the cataclysmic implosion of the SNP has acted as a catalyst towards stirring emotions and people saying, hey, we've been conned for 9 years, we're not going to be conned any longer. And now is the time to do it, to do what we want to do, which is to lead Scotland to independence. I think Alex's speech was inspiring, but there were important messages in that. And one of them was about leadership, true leadership. That's what we will need going forward. And I know that people will be impatient because we've had this hiatus. But if we're going to get this right, and we have to get it right, we have to take our time. We can't go charging ahead. We have to take people with us. And with the right leadership, with inspirational leaders like Alex Salmon, I'm convinced we will get there.
And I think things are definitely looking up. And the AUOB March was part of that. One of the interesting things about the AUOB March was there were quite a number of good SNP MPs and MSPs who were on the march who didn't make a fuss about it, and who weren't speakers, weren't advertised. I think they're starting to come, and people like Ivan McKee, Jim Fearley, and others were there. They weren't advertised as speakers. The fact they were there wasn't necessarily advertised, but there were, I can't recall all the names, but there were at least 10 or 12 MPs and MSPs from the SNP who were quietly there, even though we all know their party didn't really want them to be. And I think that's a big change. And the other really big change, I think, is that Alex is now back on TV. After this period of being ostracized and cut off and being silenced, and that makes a huge difference. That makes it, because he is by a long chalk the best politician in Scotland, the most capable, the most competent politician in Scotland. And we've also, I'm sorry to say that the SNP had turned into a personality cult. It had stopped being a functioning political party and had become a personality cult. We have seen the implosion of that personality cult. Now it's going to take a little while. Some of the people are still in grief, some are still in cognitive dissonance. It's going to take a little while for that to play out. But the disappearance of that personality cult has to be a positive thing, because that was extremely unhealthy for Scotland. So my own belief is, and you know, the last SNP march in Glasgow I was on a few months ago, not the recent one, had about 600 people on it, and this one had 20,000, and that shows we are back on the up again, and the people are moving again. And I really do believe we've passed the low point, we've passed a critical point, we've passed a point where the professional politicians were managing to sideline independence, and we're back at a point where the people and those politicians like Alex Salmond who actually genuinely believe in independence are getting back in charge. So I do believe the future is very good, and I do believe I, thank God, am going to live to see independence, and so are you too.
Well, as I say, the clock's beating us as always. Can I thank you all for bothering to be here and participating, and to those who are actually now watching at home this, yes, who's at home watching this, thanks for watching. And my usual message to everyone here and everyone that's watching is to let we all see you again, take care. But before you go, don't forget your t-shirts, your pens, your mugs, and the raffle tickets. Everything gratefully received. So please, until we see you again, take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.